This week on Great Chat, we discussing politics in startups and venture. Happy Election Day, everyone. We're taping on Tuesday, November 4th, and we have no idea what things will be like when this episode airs. I'm Helen, and this week I'm joined by Yoni Rechtman, friend of the pod, New York City resident, partner at Slow Ventures, and Ashley, who's in London. Great Chat is brought to you by Mercury, the fintech used by entrepreneurs through every stage of company building. We use Mercury to run this podcast and love recommending it to other founders and fund managers. Try it for yourself. Visit Mercury.com to join over 200,000 entrepreneurs who use Mercury to make managing their money unbelievably simple. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hi.
Yoni, thank you for joining.
You are in New York this week?
I'm in
What
New
are the
York.
vibes
I'm
like?
in
What are the vibes like?
I have not left my house since Saturday night. I've been laid up with some sort of flu or COVID. It's very 2021 chic of me. I went out to a Halloween party on Friday night and haven't left my house since. What I thought was a nasty hangover has instead turned into something much more sinister. So I don't know what the vibes are like, but I have a lot of agents and network in the field right now. And I would say that there is palpable tension. I've gotten a lot of Polymarket and Kalshi screenshots.
What is the latest right now?
I think Kalshi has it at 90% Zoran and Polymarket has 92% Zoran.
Okay.
You know, the question is, are we about to head into a sort of 2016 New York Times style, like Votometer or whatever that was called? You know, the needle that was going until like 2:00 in the morning on November 2016. But it does seem pretty buttoned up at this point, if the prediction markets are to be believed.
Well, I very strategically decided that this was a good week to be, as a New Yorker, away from New York. I mean, I did my absentee ballot, my mail-in ballot, so did my civic duty. But I'll get to watch the revelry and the despair from afar.
Yeah. SF, I think, I did early voting. We voted on one thing, which is Prop 50, which was refreshing because I feel like still one of the most embarrassing things about being a California resident is the ballot propositions and our love for recalls. So it was really nice to this time just have one issue.
Yeah, the center of crazy finally gets to be New York instead of San Francisco, and so I now get to tell.
I did see Sam say something like that. So Yoni, you said you had a hangover. It's crazy. So last night I went to this consumer hardware unveil party, and it was very cool. I think I was the oldest person there, and vibes were awesome. I don't know, and there was no alcohol, but there was crudité.
Wow.
And there was several flavors of like sparkling tea that came from like a wine bottle shaped.
And by the way, I would be willing to hazard a guess, not, on top of there being crudité, but no alcohol, I would go so far as to bet nobody ate the crudité either.
I had several carrots.
Nobody eats and nobody drinks. Yeah, exactly.
It was beautifully presented, if that counts for anything.
I'm sure.
And I thought it was interesting. It's a company called Sandbar. They're out of New York. The one thing that they said one thing that people were talking about was like, people are very used to wearing an Aura ring. Like I wear an Aura ring. I think Ashley, you do too. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like Aura has like paved the way for people to like adjust to this. And now there's this product that does everything that Aura does, plus has like an AI sort of, feature to it where you could turn on and off, and it's got this very cool swipe thing on the thumb.
Yeah.
So would it?
So I don't know.
Be an and.
That guy,
I'm not like wearing a second. I'm not wearing a Sandbar and an Aura.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be insane.
But like Aura has all my data. So, I don't know. There's like a data lock-in
exactly. Another point that I heard as well. Right? It's like, what is portable?
I tore a ligament in my wrist over the summer, and I had to wear a brace, and I'm probably going to need to get surgery and whatever. So after 10 or 15 years, I've been wearing an Apple Watch since it first came out, and this was my first extended period of not wearing one because I had a splint on, and I couldn't do it and whatever. and I took it off, and I really have not looked back since. And I think
Wait, Yoni, I'm so sorry. You just didn't switch wrists?
no, I'm not going to wear a watch on my right wrist.
Okay.
That's bizarre. Wearing a watch on your dominant
I am
hand
a
is weird.
right-handed person, and I wear my watch on my right hand, and
Wow.
people give me so much shit for it. But it can be done. Yeah, it's weird. Anyways.
It literally, until you say this now, it didn't even occur to me. Didn't even occur to me that I could have done that.
He was wearing
I've simply left it on
ankle.
the charger
Yeah.
since June. I totally get like watches as a thing that people are into. It's not what I'm into. I get like I think the utility of a lot of this stuff has been like greatly overstated. I think that a lot of it is like we don't yet totally know what to use it for. And we don't really know what to use it for other than fitness tracking after 10 or 15 years of like having this stuff in the market. So I think it's really cool and exciting that people are trying new hardware forms. I kind of refuse to believe that like this is the best we're ever going to get. For those listening at home, I held up my iPhone to the screen. I refuse to believe that that's the best we're ever going to get. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And yet I've been pretty consistently underwhelmed by new attempts at new form factors. Maybe the AI enabled stuff changes that. I've been thinking about buying an Aura ring. Maybe I'll get a sandbar instead.
I'm going to share a hot take and maybe make things a little awkward and gendered for you, Yoni. But my theory is that this stuff is so much more interesting for women because like our bodies are cyclical. And so it's not just like, oh, how much did you sleep or how much did you drink? Like your core stats change throughout 28 days or a month. And like the types of exercise you should do and recovery you should have changes. And so I actually think and it's funny because Aura initially thought I was like dying every time at a certain point in my cycle, but and then like someone told them like women exist at some point, and they were like, oh, okay, we'll fix this. But I do think wearables are like way more fun if you're a woman, and like Gen Z is super into hormones, and so they're going to be all over this.
Yeah, I have cycles too. I get up every morning and go to bed every night. I eat at roughly. What are you talking about? All the same.
Okay, yes,
But I think men and women equally like data about themselves. And this to me feels like, like remember those like tests on Facebook, like those personality quizzes or like what Hogwarts house are you in or whatever. And I think that this data about ourselves, whether it's cycle tracking or what have you, it's like, I think people just generally like to learn about themselves through data. And so I think that is always going to be the case. And so whoever presents that in like a new and interesting way, like, and we'll be on that treadmill forever. But form factor, who knows?
The thing I will say in support of Yoni's thesis or like take is one, I thought that once you could share your Aura data with friends, that would be fun. Newsflash, it's not. Like I never look at it. It was like a novelty for a couple days. And then also Aura also has an AI advisor. And it's like so basic. It's like, your sleep was lower, this week than last week. Like, let's chat about it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm traveling internationally. Like, it takes some adjustment. So the AI piece is not exciting, and I've yet to see an exciting like social element to wearables.
The most useful thing I've done on an Apple Watch has been hiking and like using the All Trails Apple Watch app to like actually stay on a trail. Same thing with like biking around New York City and getting turn by turn directions on a bike. All that stuff is useful. I don't know. I just, I think there's like, we're sort of missing the bigger point here of like being married to our phones is the future of computing. And a couple years ago when AirPods first came out, there was all this discussion about like ambient computing, and you'd have always in AirPods and a watch and like maybe some other third thing,
glasses,
and to get and right, and the glasses, and you'd have like this was before LLMs. This is like Siri as the height of conversational AI. Stitched across those things is this kind of ambient interface with which you'd use all these different services, and like I still think that idea kind of is cool to some extent, but I think for one, we found out that voice is actually like a really limited way to use computers, and voice is not gonna like easily map on to the stuff that we have already built, because we have built our systems around feeds and like whether it's feed of notifications on your lock screen or it's feed of messages within any individual app or service, like voice is really terrible for parsing a feed. And so it sort of feels like we may be bound to screens and visual representation until or unless like the ergonomics of voice and the way all of our systems and products and services are designed just really don't mesh well together. So I like all of these ideas and I'm happy to see people trying stuff and experimenting around and like, but I expect we'll see more failure before we see something really break out. And like, I'd be so excited about anything that's pitching a use case beyond fitness.
Well, so in our group chat last week, we had lots of memes on Neo, the 1X Technologies soft robot humanoid thing.
Not technically wearable unless you're going to give it a piggyback ride, but yeah.
Yes.
But segue to another form factor. It's a 20K humanoid robot for household chores. And would you guys get one? Is this appealing to you?
We've spent a decade now scaling up, click farms in the Philippines. And now the logical next step of AI is to bring the Filipino click farm directly into your home via teleoperated robot. Absolutely not. No way.
A recurring comment that I make on this is like the human form factor is just like a no for me. Like, why is this not shaped like Rosie, the robot from the Jetsons, or something a little bit more like R2D2-ish? The human part of it is terrifying. But it's a 20K. It's a one-time yours forever fee. And I'd have to read the paperwork. I don't know if that's inclusive of all future software updates. But one thought that I had, and this like kind of reminded me because we have an EV, is that like if that's a 20K one-time fee and that's inclusive all future software updates, that's kind of cool. Like the robot gets better over time. And so that's like a new way to kind of think about hardware.
Well, as long as it's the software that like drives the improved performance versus tweaks to the hardware.
It's the same thing as before. It's really cool what people are doing. And I hope that all of the rush of investment and work on humanoid robots will have like really cool spillover effects. I'm not super convinced that like we're all going to wind up with humanoids in our homes. I actually really think that like not having a robot in your home, like right now, the robots in the house are like this very cool thing and it's this like high status thing. I think it's totally backwards. The high status thing is going to be to have no robots in your houses. That just feels very obvious to me. Like it's already true that it's the lobies that are like logging on to a Zoom meeting with like their Fathom note taker and their like 35 other like AI note taking apps that join. You're like, why do you have more than one? I don't understand this. And so it's already become the like high class thing is to use granola. And then the like properly high class thing is to just make a phone call and not use anything at all.
Oh,
the same thing is going to happen in the house.
Okay.
Like there's no way that the fancy people of the world and the people with like taste and class are going to have a robot in their house. They're going to have a person or they're going to have nobody at all.
Well, I do think technology generally tries to democratize access to a lot of like really premium goods and services to everyone. I think generally that is a theme that sticks throughout, sort of time and like technology.
Is Robinhood a high class app?
I don't think so. I think if you look at their user base, like where sort of their growth has sort of netted out. I would say that it's growing in certain segments, faster than others.
It's for like Discord anons smashing out crazy options trades in their parents' basements. The same is going to happen with the robots. The robots are all going to go out to like McMansions in the suburbs.
But I would say that's every tech product. That's every large consumer internet platform. As you scale, it's just very, very hard to sort of retain that initial.
Are you an iPad parent? Are you like an iPad household with your kids? Mm-hmm. Okay, well that's actually that confounded what I was.
Well, I mean, my son has to like the school assigns homework, so But yeah. But they're not. My son's like such a sports kid that like he's, one thing I realized was like other people talk about their kids sitting on YouTube all day. And it's like my kid, I don't even know what YouTube is, which is great. Well, the last thing on the humanoid robot is one thing that I thought of was like, so I've tried a bunch of like parenting apps, and like, oh, it'll help you run your household, it'll help you like organize all your
Yeah.
kids' schedules, and oftentimes like the work associated with getting those AIs to like work really well is like you have to sit down and put together like a doc to like onboard this AI to talk about your household. Here's who's in it. Here's what their schedules are. Here's typically like where the information sources are. And like all of the prep that goes into feeding the structured data into the AI oftentimes ends up being like such a game changer in terms of like me getting my shit together that I'm like, oh shit. Well, now I actually feel like I kind of have a handle on things, guys. And I feel like similarly, like the humanoid robot, I guess like even though they're not shipping the robots until next year, they're encouraging, people who've signed up to like input into the app, like this is what my house looks like. These are what my chores are. Here's who, and I'm like, that's so much work that I bet that for a lot of these people. Yeah.
Here's the move. Pull a Sam Altman with Tesla, pre-order, do all the work, and then cancel, but then use your new workflow document to reorganize your lifestyle.
We'll see. I feel like we are living in the future, but maybe it's all just a forcing function of getting our shit together in the present. So
I think all this stuff is cool. My wife would never let a robot into the house. My dog would never let a robot into the house.
Like
so it's all ex post
thing.
facto rationalization.
Unless this dog has like a secret tray that comes out from its leg that's like constantly feeding treats, Tawny is not going to stand for it. So I'm vetoing the house robot.
It needs to be cheap enough or have a return policy such that I can get rid of it very quickly, because I'm okay spending a few $100s to have like a sandbar ring that sits in a drawer in my house and doesn't get used. I don't really want to drop 20 grand on a robot
that's like 6 feet tall. You're like, where do I put this in a New York City apartment?
Yeah.
Maybe the move is to build like a robot cleaning army, and instead of it just being a perma robot, it's like your new housekeeper, and you get used to it and you like it, and then you're like, actually
do you want to split one?
Yeah, let's split one. Yoni and I live near each other,
custody?
So we'll just see it doing like the walk of shame between our houses.
Between our houses, yeah.
That's good. Do you guys read the any of the transcript of the deposition, the Elon Musk versus OpenAI?
Oh, it's so good.
This week, not just this deposition, but I feel like people are kind of calling for like, oh, Sam can't be trusted. This is the person we're trusting for, on AGI. And then it feels like the timing is such that we're hearing like some of his colleagues, in this deposition having like shared the same sort of sentiment that he lies casually. He undermines his execs, that he pits them against each other. And he's got a consistent pattern of this. I think like maybe one like sort of trauma PTSD part of me, I was like, yeah, that's like every organization I've ever worked for. That sounds very like a political workplace. And maybe like, Ilya is such a purist, and it was very disappointing for him to see this behavior. But I think for a lot of us, like, yeah, I've worked in, tough organizations where execs get pitted against each other. And, so I don't know. I really felt like it was a depends on what your life experience and context is on how you read that situation.
The problem is when you mix office politics with like, real like cult and religion, which is what OpenAI was founded on, between all of the sort of doomerism / safetyism / effective altruism, plus we're going to build machine god from sand, plus we're doing this as a nonprofit to benefit humanity instead of our shareholders. Like, you mix all of that together with world leading ambition, and those are like real culture clashes. And it's truly just the banality of corporate politics in a way that's so profoundly boring. It's just usually not laid bare quite this way to the tune of $500 billion.
Sure. I mean, like one of the things when the board issued the statement, right? It was like a Friday in November. I forgot exactly what day, but a couple of people asked me like, what do they mean by this? What do you think is happening? Because like Adam D'Angelo's on the board, and I worked at Quora for a little while, and they asked me if like, what do you think? And I'm like, I read it, and I said, I think that this is actually very literal. I think that this is quite straightforward, and he's suggesting that like Sam, has demonstrated that he can't be trusted as CEO. I think that's all that it is. Like, people were trying to like read into it. They had all these conspiracy theories about having misalignment on the path forward and all these. And I was like, no, I think that Adam just told you exactly what is happening. And it's, you're being sort of fantastical about it. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting.
There's this phenomenal Paul Graham quote that I think of often when I hear about OpenAI drama, which is Paul Graham said you could parachute him
on an island
of cannibals.
Yes, and he would
and come back in 5 years and he'd be their king.
But don't we know this?
Phenomenally prescient.
But don't we know this?
Except the thing is, he wasn't parachuted into an island of cannibals. He was parachuted into an island of tender AI researchers who thought that money didn't matter, and they were all playing for the same team.
But isn't his whole thing power? He's so good at being a leader. He's great at fundraising. Like, I think that this is our modern day CEO, because like if we're thinking back to him, he dropped out of Stanford, he founded Loop, which had an exit, but that was sort of like the only time he's built a company, right? And otherwise, he's just been in place as a CEO. He was CEO of Reddit for like 8 days or 10 days. He's like a professional CEO.
That's an interesting take, that if Elon is the prototypical founder, then, or the founder of the moment, arguably the best founder, not arguably, the best founder of all time, then is Sam the best CEO of all time?
You guys, I think we need something aside from like founder mode, executive mode, and like Sam is CEO mode. It's something else entirely.
Yes, exactly. It's like him and, look, typically people say Frank Slootman, but he was the CEO of Reddit. He was the CEO of
YC,
Y Combinator. Yeah. He is the CEO, but not founding CEO of OpenAI. I don't think they had a CEO when they were founded. Yeah, greatest CEO of all time? Question mark. Time will tell. Either that, or he's going to single-handedly, crash the economy.
Great segue into our main topic for today: single-handedly crashing the economy. I feel like I read that over and over and over again in my Twitter feed the last couple of months leading up to this election. So, our big question and topic of the day is: what is the role or non-role of politics in startups and venture today? So today is election day. If you're in New York City, you're voting on the only mayoral race that anyone knows about right now. And if you're in San Francisco, you're voting, you're looking up like what the heck Prop 50 is. And that's kind of it. It was so refreshing. It was so fast. It was so easy. So we thought it might be fun to celebrate the day by talking about how to talk about politics at work in the year 2025.
Politics is tribalism and aesthetics by another name. And, politics, insofar as it's different from policy, policy being the issues of like implementation and more sort of like technical questions, politics being, who beats who and who's in power and who wins the day, is, for better or for worse, and I actually think largely for worse, a very natural fit with the sort of cultural moment of tech right now, which is so much about like the daily vicissitudes of power within, these gargantuan companies and, venture funds and networks. It actually maps very well onto sort of playing the same sort of notes and rhythms about politics. It's just, it's a different locus of power, but it's the same rhythms.
I think that, we get very, like, you hear a lot of people criticize tech and sort of like, VCs and founders and getting political because they have all this money or they want more money. And I'm like, no, money is not the thing. I think it's power. I think it's influence. Like the money became less interesting once they got it, right? But I think for most people, they never reach the point where they have enough money. So it's easy to sort of see that is what, the motivation is. And I really think it's influence and power. And, like the uncomfortable conversation that nobody really wants to have is like, I think a lot of this has to just do with like class. I think we're talking about, there's like a, a religious, or like there's like lots of talk about race and ethnic groups, and a lot of these like hot button issues that I think have spurred tribalism, but nowhere in the conversation am I really like hearing a lot about the class sort of breakdown of all of this.
It is the Achilles heel of American politics, and maybe not even just American politics, like America. The double-edged sword of America is that everyone believes that they too will be rich and successful.
Yeah, what is it? A temporarily embarrassed millionaire, right? Everyone believes that they're a millionaire who's temporarily out on their luck or something.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah. So, we're a country where everyone believes that they're going to be rich and successful. And on the one hand, that spurs an incredible spirit of like dynamism and entrepreneurial energy that frankly you just don't have in a lot of places in the world, like especially in Europe. When you talk to people who aren't from the States and they come to the States to build a business, the number one thing you'll hear from them over and over again is like, wow, everyone like wants you to win and succeed and thinks that you will, and everyone thinks that they're like, we're all going to make it. And that's incredible. The problem is that it also means that we have a society that probably spends too much time like valorizing and worshiping people who have been successful and like have no class solidarity in America. We only have upward or aspirational class solidarity.
I mean, so being in venture or a founder during election season is like kind of crazy, because I feel like the rules keep changing, right? It was like, don't ever talk about politics. Then it was like, bring your whole self to work. And now it's like, we are a mission-driven company. And, now it feels very, very vocal. So we're kind of back to that again. But I guess like something I'm curious from both of you, VCs have a boss. It's sometimes your managing partner, right? But it's always your LPs. Does it really matter? Like, do LPs matter? Because one, in terms of like figuring out where they stand on their politics and sort of how close you have to be or be non-political. One thought I had was for early stage venture, like the timelines are so long that if you are critical of, let's say, a fund that you invested in, and their politics, and then they end up like being a banger of a fund and they're fire hosing distributions, and later they're like, yeah, you know what, we're not going to let you into our next fund. Like how do you think about bigger LPs or institutional LPs in kind of like this political moment?
This is a business. And for all of the ways that we want to talk about like, it's not a business, it's a family and it's a culture, and it's no, this is a business. And on both sides of the table, both with startups and startups to founders to investors and investors to LPs, like there are things that you talk about to bond with people, and there are things that you talk about to make money with people. And sometimes those two things might be in conflict with one another. But like, first and foremost, this is a business, and we all have to like, I don't necessarily care about the politics of the person who makes my coffee, as long as they like, are polite and smile to me and like
and the coffee is good.
Make the fucking cup of coffee. Yeah, as long as they make the fucking cup of coffee. I would imagine that a lot of LPs feel the same way about the managers that they back. I'm sure that is not universally true. And there is obviously behavior that like will cross the line. History is replete with examples of that happening. Rarely, though, is it about politics. It's more often about like personal indiscretions would be the polite way of saying it. So I don't know. I don't think that everyone at Slow agrees about everything. And, we have a partnership that can disagree with one another. And some of our partners are more vocal than others about like politics and social issues. It has not really ever come up to my knowledge with our institutional LPs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like there are these pitchforks, calling for Sequoia's LPs to take action, in response to some of the things that Sean McGuire has said. I'm like, I don't think so, guys. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. The timelines are so long, and this is just such a blip in the sort of grand, scheme of things and Sequoia's history and of course like their performance and the strength of that relationship.
Yeah.
But who knows? I don't know. What do you think?
We only have US dollars. We don't manage any money for foreign governments, which frankly makes our job and life a lot easier. It means that we don't have to make some of those trade-offs about like, at least like foreign policy and whatever that other people may have to make. But if you want to manage $40 billion, like you simply can't raise that from within the US.
So like if you just joined a new startup or a new venture firm and you hear some of the maybe more senior partners talking about politics, who they voted for, why, what do you think someone today, what's like good advice for someone today to like join the conversation? Or, is it, this is a mission driven company and keep your head down?
I just don't think anything matters nearly as much as doing your job well. And if you think and you want to make a bet with your career that part of doing your job well is going to be getting into some, network of people, and part of that is through politics, like fine, and so be it. But it has to be in service of doing your job well, not the other way around. And I think any institution that's going to like survive is going to do that on the basis of its, performance to some goal, even if that goal is, like marketing and declaring yourself important and relevant. Like you still have to actually do that successfully. Coming into a new firm, which to be clear is very different than coming into a new startup. Startups are less political and more performance oriented because you can do stuff on a faster timeline. So if you're coming into a new startup, like, and your founders are like talking about politics all the time, I don't know. I probably just because that company's not going to work out. If you join a seed stage company and they're talking about literally anything other than like winning the fight of the day,
yeah, exactly,
for the business, I would be very concerned that they're just like not going to make it. And frankly, like just like mostly the same thing within a fund where like, I don't know, man, if you have a lot of time to like kick around politics in your partner meetings, like
yeah,
you just need
not a lot to talk about in the
like,
portfolio. Yeah, not a lot of activity there.
Yeah,
well, actually, like you and I have both been, in various internal comms roles and setting policies around like what employees say and what what sort of like the norms are. How are you seeing this moment different as maybe the time that we were living through the pandemic or the time before that?
I'm very grateful that I'm not in a comms role today. I think
I've had that thought as well.
It wasn't fun in 2020 either, right? Because as you said, like the bar kept moving, the playbooks kept sliding, expectations changed a lot. And I think it's really hard to manage like an organization of people who have very diverse views and feel strongly, and some of those views are tied to their identity. And, this is not an original thought, but like looking back, I have more appreciation for Brian Armstrong's post about like mission over politics, which at the time I was like, well, what is this? It is nice sort of having my own firm company and getting to just make any decision in real time around what is a public part of my beliefs and persona and what is not. And I think that this is tricky to navigate. Like, I have a couple takes. One is I think a lot of the people who are most political on the internet, it is not coming from a place of deeply held political beliefs. It is coming from opportunism. Right now, we're in a mode, we've talked about this a lot, where like venture brand building matters a lot. The individual brand matters a lot. Yoni, you were talking about the similarities between tech and politics. And like right now, we're in a moment where the extremes are rewarded and what gets attention. And so I think a lot of people are using politics to like put themselves on the map. And I think that can be like a very successful strategy when you like align with this moment and make the zeitgeist your whole personality. But there's some risk to that when times change. I also think, though, that people are kind of betting on these next few years are the ones that are going to matter the most, especially if they are sort of deep in the AI world. And so I think people are just way more risk on with their personal brands, with politics being a part of that than I've ever seen. I'm sure some people have like deeply thought through beliefs, but a lot of people change their entire belief system with this moment. And I don't think that was necessarily a process that they went through out of the desire to go deep into politics. I think it's all about brand building.
Cynical. I like it.
Yeah.
Also probably true.
I'm so cynical. Like, people online and people in person are so different right now. Like, I'm online sometimes and I'm like, what is this industry? And then I see people in venture, in startups, in an event. I'm like, I love all these people. And so I think social media is, and like the power game in tech right now is bringing out certain behaviors and incentivizing certain behaviors. And politics is a great lightning rod to attach yourself to.
I think that all the people who sort of, take that lightning rod approach, though, they have a certain amount of agency where they either are a founder, they run their own, venture firm, or like taking that risk. It's like contained, if that makes sense. Like you're not like a random employee inside of a large organization where you're counting on, performance reviews and upward mobility and like increased opportunity there. I think that like those voices are probably a little bit more careful, if that makes sense. So I think that that's consistent with who tends to have a large following and who tends to do well on Twitter too, right? So it's like people who just don't have as many folks to answer to, I guess, is maybe like, supporting Yoni's point, where it's like, if you're actually focused on something, you're not writing out the Bill Ackman tweets of like the 17 paragraph.
By the way, can I say there are exceptions, and I actually think Yoni is an exception, which probably is why we wanted to have him on this episode. Like really thoughtful, not antagonism for antagonism's sake, like willing to tackle nuance, but also willing to take a stand. Like, there are people out there.
And look what it's done for my career.
Yoni just got promoted to partner. Yes.
Look what it's done for my career. I've rocketed to the middle of the pack of, like generic 30-year-old white guy venture capitalists. That's where nuance will get you. Just about nowhere.
I struggle to think of a great active venture firm right now where they don't have actually quite a bit of like diversity of like political sort of values, on the team. I think that is by design. I think that usually you do that, to sort of make sure that you're testing every deal with the same amount of rigor, and they structure partnerships that way.
I just really don't think it matters. I think that if you can't, I think often about the idea of like, what's the difference between teams and families? And like, teams come together for common purpose and families are bound together by common origin. The common purpose that we have come together, and I should say we have come together, that I have been admitted into the partnership to work towards, is like, let's make money for ourselves and our LPs.
Yeah.
We have a way that we think we can do that best, but like, we definitely believe that we are in a business together for a reason. And like, the more time that we spend talking about things that aren't related to that, like, we all like each other, you should work with people that you like, and you should be able to talk about whatever you want to talk about. But like, if you're spending all of your time, especially at an early stage company, talking about basically anything other than the work that you're there to do, like, you're just not going to make it.
I think that the nuance in which you are even able to articulate this part is needed, because sometimes I think about like the new grad in 2017, 18, sort of in the height of the trauma of like the first Trump presidency, and then there was like Me Too, right? And I think a lot of companies, not just in tech but more broadly, like started to have a conversation around like, what do we do to support our employees who are going through a hard time, whatever. That was like their introduction into society and the workforce and being an adult. And then now it's very different. And so, as an older person, I'm like, this stuff goes up and down, and you just got to like figure out what works for you and focus on the right thing. So I don't really get moved by it, but like having managed different cohorts of people who, are, different ages, and I just wonder like how those people are doing who, their introduction into adulthood and the real world was during a period where it was a little bit more of an, that wasn't the norm. It was a pretty unique time. And now it feels, almost like a 180. It's very different.
Well, sort of like, was it, for so much of the 20th century, Americans were promised certain things by their employers, or at least in the post-war period, were promised certain things by their employers about getting taken care of and career employment and, retirement benefits and rising wages and all of this stuff that was actually like very paternalistic and well-intentioned and, for the most part followed through on until suddenly it wasn't. Like maybe the sort of touchy-feely COVID blip was actually like a, kind of bizarre throwback that was very short-lived in the middle of like a sort of great untethering of people from their employers.
That's interesting.
And I think I think the meme today is like, nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's going to take care of you. You have to take care of yourself. And I think that is scary for some and true for most, and probably somewhat liberating and like exciting for some limited number of people. Like the nature of jobs and employment is meaningfully changing. People's tenure, and I'm saying all of this among like a relatively small group of people, but even outside of white collar employment, like, an Amazon warehouse has like 300% employee churn. Like they effectively wash the entire warehouse staff every couple months. We're just moving to a very different world, and have been moving to a very different world in terms of like the nature of employment and labor relations, probably since the 1980s, and certainly accelerating after the Great Recession in 2008. So like, yeah, I don't know, your employer isn't going to take care of you, and you have to like, frankly, always have an eye on the door, and like always, and like your resume should never be stale.
No, I agree. But I do think that in such a short amount of time, we have just really seen like two extremes. And I think that is hard to contextualize as a younger person. Like I, was like just a couple years out of college when 2008 happened. And as it was happening, I was like, oh, this seems hard and weird and bad. But like I didn't fully understand it because I couldn't take like a 10,000 foot view yet. I was too fresh. And I sort of apply that same thinking into like, if you're a couple years out of college, like this is going to leave an impression on you. And I'm curious about what the takeaways will be. I mean, I think one story I have from my Plaid days was I was like the exec chair of the DEI committee. And I remember a very, very talented engineer, like one that Plaid definitely cared about retaining, came to me and said, the CEO doesn't follow any women on Twitter. And I'm like, he follows me. He's like, yeah, but he really only follows other white men. And I'm like, why are you looking at who he's following on Twitter? Like, what are you doing? It's like, well, I look at what he's liking, and it is nothing, aligned with my values. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what do you, it was just I felt like I remember being in that moment, and I'm like, we've gone to new extremes. Like this is a moment. But that was, I think that was a reflection of where we kind of were.
So what did you say to Zach after that?
I don't even think I explained that specific thing.
Yeah.
And I just said like, look, right now I think that people are looking for signs. Like they are going to look. They are searching however they can to find answers and safety and comfort, that they're working at a place that aligns their values. And so I think I said something like broadly like that. And the message was understood. And look, it was important. Like, look, I think that people talk about the flip-flopping of people are so confused. Like, oh, why was this one founder, billionaire, super progressive one election cycle ago, and now they got red pilled? And it's like, I don't think it's that simple. I think that there are so many things that contribute to things like that. But, in that moment, it was very much like employees' retention was really, really, really important. It was a fight for talent. And, a lot of it's hard to imagine now, maybe for some people, but for a lot of the the diversity initiatives and all this, it came from engineering. It came from heads of engineering who were like, we're trying to recruit the best and the brightest coming out of the top, computer science programs in the country, and this is what those new grads want. And I think that that's actually probably a good answer to the question of why are you seeing so many VCs attack universities right now?
And you know what the top people want today?
What do they want today?
$100 million signing bonuses. So I think
coming out of the same programs. Yeah.
The top AI researchers today I want $100 million.
It's so interesting, but anyways,
I too want $100 million more than I want committees.
Would you go back and study computer science?
I'm not smart enough to do that. No. I would love to have some aptitude. Sadly, I have very little aptitude, so I am a venture capitalist. When I was, when I sort of knew I wanted to work in tech, it was like, well, there are 3 jobs. There are founders, engineers, and investors. And I was like, well, I can't be a founder because I don't have any ideas. And I can't be an engineer because I'm not an engineer. Okay, so option number 3, I should go be a venture capitalist. Had I known half of what I know today, I probably would have wound up in sales or operations or something, that actually contributes to the company. But I didn't. So here I am 10 years later.
The classic, the self-deprecating humor. I have a question for you for the last segment of our podcast. So Ashley,
that was a good transition, right?
Ashley and I were teasing you about getting promoted to partner this year, and I think part of the story that made that so interesting and so great was that was not technically a path that was available to you. I think they made that clear to you, and you also were like, "That's not what I want, anyways," right? So just curious, how did that work out? Yeah. And is there some takeaway that others have, when they're told this is an associate program and it's 3 years, I think that's very typical of a lot of big firms. What advice would you give to people looking to build a career in venture based on your experience?
So the context here, I joined Slow about 4 years ago. And when I was interviewing, the conversation was, Kevin, one of my partners asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I said, not at Slow. And he said, great. And we had, a pretty explicit conversation where I said, this is going to be an awesome stepping stone for me to go and raise my own fund. And he said, wonderful. We had really awesome people help us along the way. We want to do the same for you. Come here, get better, build a track record, build a network, and we will help you spin out and do your own thing. And, for me, I thought, that's what I wanted. I wanted the independence and autonomy and frankly, the economics to, that come with that. And for them, it obviated a lot of hard conversations about how do you think about succession and expanding the partnership and sharing, carry with people in a more substantial way. And then a couple years into being at Slow, I was like, hey guys, we'd said I would be here for this amount of time. Let's just get on the same page. I kind of don't really want to leave right now. Do you want me to leave? And everyone said no. And I said, okay, so can we figure out a solution to that problem and not be when we did and it's fine. And, I'm very happy to now be signed up, as a partner at Slow, and I'll be here for, I'm no longer watching the exit.
So what are some takeaways there? What are some takeaways there?
Yeah. I do think that anytime you're a part of a partnership, you are, as a part of a partnership, you are both paying a tax and charging a tax, and you have to be able to understand what you're giving and getting for that. And everyone has to feel good about the trade. Doesn't mean that it has to be an equal partnership. In fact, even at an equal partnership, the same problems still exist, or the same dynamic still exists, where what am I getting and what am I giving? And if everyone feels good about what they're getting and giving, then it's incumbent on you to just have an honest conversation. I don't know. This is not bullshit, self-deprecating. I'm not very good at politics. I've never worked at a big company. I've only had 2 jobs in my whole career, and they've both been at pretty small firms. So I don't have a lot of experience with it. I do have a reasonable amount of experience having direct and difficult conversations with people. It's honestly a pretty good first test of whether or not you should be somewhere for a long time is if you can or cannot have like direct and difficult conversations.
I think that's that's fantastic. I think that's perfect. As you were saying that, I'm like literally thinking of many people, in my life that are trying to figure out the right time to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And then months go by, I'll see them and I'll check in. How did that go? And they're like, oh yeah, I still haven't had it. And so I truly feel like actually what you just said is really valuable.
And to be clear, we didn't have some big complex negotiation. It wasn't like, there's no high drama about this at all. Like, we had basically one conversation that was like, should I stay? A second conversation that was like, what does it look like to stay? And a third conversation that was like, okay, let's like work out some of the specifics and particulars. And the whole thing happened over the course of like a month. It just wasn't that big of a deal. And I think it mirrors the way that we make investment decisions. It mirrors the way that we make decisions about, personnel otherwise and, firm building stuff. I don't know. My advice to other people is like work with people who you really like and could see yourself wanting to stick around with. And when the time comes, like on the one hand, yeah, nobody's going to like give you anything. On the other hand, if you're thinking about it in terms of like, like seizure and, like I have to take things, that's a really bad attitude to come into like a long-term partnership or relationship with. State your needs. And if they're not met in good faith, like that's your answer. And even if you can wring concessions out of people, you probably are better off just not doing that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week.
Yeah,
it's good to see you.
I wish I had something more like sexy and scandalous to tell you, but
no, I think that's actually
have hard conversations.
Have hard conversations. I think is actually the most important thing that you just said there. So, anyways,
yeah.
All right. I'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to Great Chat. Have questions for us? Make sure to submit them at anothergreatchat.com. See you next week.